If I was to tell you that the spinnerbait holds a secret power that nobody's told you about, would you believe me? And as a matter of fact, it's not just the spinnerbait that holds this power, it is every single type of reaction bait. I'm talking the crankbait, the vibrating jig, and the swim bait. In today's video, I'm gonna teach you guys a very simple method that can be used for any style of reaction bait, but especially for the spinnerbait, that if used correctly, can lead to more fish catches for you, whether you fish from the bass boat or on the bank. My name's Tyler, and let's talk about it. Another giant, another giant. Look at that, y'all. I can't believe what I just caught. Yes! Today's instructional episode is brought to you by Bass Forecast. More on them and what they do for bass fishermen here in a bit. Now, in order to share this spinnerbait secret with you guys, I've actually first got to share the story of how I learned this trick for myself. So stick with me. There's a ton of good, helpful information for somebody like you who wants to learn how to catch more bass. At the most recent Major League Fishing professional tournament called Heavy Hitters, my best friend Alton Jones Jr. won the event by over 60 pounds. It wasn't even close. And he was throwing a spinnerbait throughout the entirety of the final day. I have the pleasure of getting to travel with him on tour and film all of his YouTube content, and so I've got an inside scoop as to how one of the best minds in all of pro bass fishing works and why he chooses to throw certain lures in certain places at certain times. He is so smart. And on this final day, he taught me something very, very unique about reaction baits like the spinnerbait that I've never quite thought of before. To give some context, let's talk about the lake itself they were competing on, and this lake is called Bussey Brake. Bussey Brake is a very shallow lake with an abundance of flooded trees, bushes, and grass. In the practice period for this event, multiple anglers caught a fish over 10 pounds, including Kevin Van Dam, Gary Klein, Dustin Connell, and many anglers caught fish over 7 and 8 pounds. There are some giants in this lake. And to my knowledge, all of these fish were caught in practice by flipping soft plastic creature baits and jigs in and around a certain type of flooded tree called a willow tree. These types of trees, when flooded, create almost like a basket with their branches that big bass especially love to sit in the very tops of and then ambush prey and come back in the basket of branches. And like I said, it was calm in practice, which led to easy conditions to flip and pitch around those willow trees to catch some giant bass. When the actual tournament day rolled around, of course, the weather was a complete 180. It was cloudy and had increasing levels of wind as the day progressed. All throughout the morning though, Alton did catch a few fish flipping and pitching his soft plastic in and around the willow trees, but pretty quickly he realized that the quantity and the quality of the fish was not the same, and he attributed that to the change in wind. Now, one thing we as anglers cannot control is the weather, but what you can do is use Bass Forecast to help you plan for the weather on your fishing trips. The Bass Forecast app uses past, present, and future weather data to help predict how the fish should be biting on your body of water. By just putting in your location into the app, it'll spit out a recommended list of locations to try, times to try them, different lures to try, and one of the awesome new features we just put in the app is detailed instructional videos teaching you how to fish every single lure category. And the cool thing is, all the videos were made by me, and so if you enjoy the teaching here on Tyler's Real Fishing, if you like the way that I teach things, you now have all of the information in my head on demand in the Bass Forecast app at the touch of a finger. And so that's something no other fishing app can say, and I think it's already helped tons of people who use Bass Forecast. As y'all can tell, I'm a big part of Bass Forecast. I'm actually a co-owner, and so I believe in the platform. I believe in the back-end algorithm that helps predict bass behavior. I can say it's worked for me, and I think it'll work for you as well. I'm gonna leave a link down in the video description to download Bass Forecast. The premium version to get all the features is 20 bucks a year, but you get a $20 Tackle Warehouse gift card if you sign up. And so it's basically free, and for future years, it's like $1.50 a month, which is a heck of a deal for everything in the app. Now let's get back to how the wind affected the spinnerbait bite. Whenever the wind blows above, I'd say 5 to 10 miles an hour, it moves everything that's in the water that isn't sturdy. And so willow trees, even though they might look like they are a big tree, a big bush, whenever the wind is blowing, they are moving in the water column, and that basket the fish are sitting in is moving ever so slightly, and that is creating an environment that especially big bass do not feel comfortable sitting in. They want cover and structure that is not moving. The bait fish might still be there, the water clarity might still be good, but the number one thing I learned from Alton on this day is that those big bass did not want to be sitting in structure and cover that was moving because of the wind. The same thing applies to lily pads. pads. I have personally experienced a lily pad bite that dies as soon as the wind picks up because those lily pad stems are moving and the big bass just don't feel quite comfortable, and so they either don't bite or they totally leave the area. And because Alton is a genius, he decided to make the move very early on in the day to abandon what had worked in practice and what had caught him a few fish already in the tournament to move to another location on the lake that had a type of flooded tree that was not affected by the wind and the water, and that is a cypress tree. Alton had this to say about the location he chose to fish.
Got the wind lapping in here like this. I mean, this is nice. See, the other trees I was complaining about the wind because it shakes them. Nothing's shaking a cypress tree.
And that is true. Cypress trees are incredibly big and thick, and no matter how much wind or waves you have, they are not moving. So while the wind was moving the water and the trees at the first location, the wind was just moving the water at the second, which led to a perfect situation to throw a spinnerbait. But why? As water moves in your body of water, it positions the bait fish because a current is created. And bass, as smart, instinctual creatures, are going to feed most when it's easiest to capture their prey. So just like ledge fishing and offshore fishing is better when you have current present as it brings the meal to the bass, shallow water fishing is no different. If you have wind creating current, it will position those bass and make them more active, therefore making a reaction bait like the spinnerbait the best choice. And because of these conditions, Alton used a white spinnerbait to target bass high in the water column that were using the roots in the branches of cypress trees as ambush points to feed on bait fish, and he had an amazing day doing so.
Big one.
Now, of course, a vibrating jig like this, Thunder Cricket, could have been used to catch those bass, but it's not nearly as weedless as a spinnerbait is, so in this scenario, it's probably not the best choice. A paddle tail swim bait and a swim jig could have also worked in that scenario, but probably would have gotten less bites because the fish would have had a harder time finding it in the water column because the wind was lapping in there, it was causing some noise, disturbing the water, and so these two here, while great reaction baits, are not the best choice for this scenario. And a shallow diving crankbait would have been nearly impossible to roll cast and fish around shallow cypress trees, and so it is definitely not the best choice for this scenario. And this is why the spinnerbait is such a powerful reaction bait with so many amazing qualities, because it could be thrown where no other reaction bait could, and as you could tell, it worked amazing for Alton and won him $100,000. So hopefully at this point, y'all understand exactly what I'm trying to teach in this video, and that is two things: that you want to make sure you're throwing the spinnerbait if the conditions line up for it, and if you have wind in your body of water. It could be a big lake, a small lake, a pond, a creek. If you have wind, it will position those fish, especially next to hard pieces of structure and cover. So it could be wood like Alton was fishing. It could be rocks and boulders, could be a ledge, could be the edge of a dock or a retaining wall. Anything hard, a bass will use as an ambush point because the wind cannot move that object. Now, one last tip I have for the spinnerbait and the vibrating jig is talked about in this video over here. I teach a masterclass video on how to adjust the depth that you are retrieving the bait back to you, and trust me, by watching that video, you will catch more fish and have more success on reaction baits like the vibrating jig and the spinnerbait. My name's Tyler, and I'll see you guys over in that video.